I expect no rotations.
Wow.
To you do?
Well, so you think the same lineup in all three games?
Well, maybe not the same lineup, and if maybe if Hazard is completely ready, or so or even Rodrigo can give Asensio, for example, some rest on the right wing, or Vinicius, or can rest for the last 30 minutes against Barcelona if Hazard is 100% ready to go and all. But for the midfield, I think so. I completely think so. I think that. It makes sense to me also that Casemiro, Kroos, and Modric completed a brilliant performance against Liverpool, and ultimately it would be risky to introduce Valverde, as reliable as he is, when you saw what this midfield trio did against Liverpool. So I expect no rotations in the midfield.
Logically speaking, I actually think that makes sense. Like, so the list of a short list of players I have, and I don't think there's going to be any rotations against Liverpool. So if there's anything at all, it'll be slight tweaks in the Clasico, and I think it'll be minuscule, but it's something like a Fede for Modric, or I don't know, the odd chance of Rodrigo maybe over one of Asensio or Vinicius, something like that, possibly.
Yeah.
When is Carvajal going to be back? Do we know?
Yeah, I just tweeted that. I read a report saying that he just trained by himself today. It seems that it's taking him a long time to
Yeah, so that
to
means
clear
no.
this last stage of recovery. So definitely not for El Clásico. And considering that he's a defender, it would surprise me a lot to see him starting against Liverpool. And if he's not ready to start, I don't expect him to come off the bench either. So
Like, how dissimilar is this to, like, so we have Liverpool, Barcelona, Liverpool, and actually, in the span of a week, right? A little over a week. I think
yeah,
it's 8 days. How dissimilar is that to an NBA series in the playoffs that goes 7 games and you're playing like every second day, and
yeah,
you have your same starting lineup every single time?
yeah.
Is it that different? I always thought about that. Like, we always talk like, oh, how do we juggle rotations? And I think it's a valid question. I'm not saying it's a bad question. You want to make sure everybody is fresh and healthy, but like, is it that dissimilar where you just roll with your best team? Like, so if you go with your best team against Clasico, which by the way is, there's a question. Like right now, I'll just read the question really quick. So Alexis Seniceros, our patron, says, would the result against Barca make or break our season in La Liga? In my opinion, yes. I think we can,
Oh yeah, definitely.
if we lose and Zidane will do the thing where like we're still mathematically liable, blah, blah, blah. No, I think it's if they win this, there's
It's
a good
over.
chance
Yeah,
they can win. If they lose, I think it's over. But if they, so they have to win this. So that means you go in with their best starting lineup, but you can't risk it. So, and then if something happens, like if Modric, God forbid, or somebody gets injured for a Liverpool game, then you just cross that bridge when you get there. Next man up. I think it can be that simple.
yeah. Yeah, it was that simple for him with the Varane deal, at least. I mean, he just mentioned that the plan was to play a 4-3-3, and the fact that Varane got injured didn't change that plan at all. And he just put the next man in, who was Militao, and that was it. And as you mentioned, the importance of the game against Barcelona is huge. If Real Madrid were, say, 2 points farther behind than they are right now, maybe Zidane would consider rotating the squad. But the fact that if you win this game, you increase your chances of competing for the title by a lot.
Yeah.
Kind of forces you to just to play the same lineup that got it done, and completed such a brilliant performance against Liverpool. Maybe with the exception of Rodrigo playing instead of Asensio, for example, or even Vinicius.
So Michael Zinberg says, with Vinicius' recent run of success, is Hazard an automatic starter when he returns?
My answer for me, if I were making the calls, would be no. But I think that Zidane will probably try, obviously if Hazard stays healthy and is 100% ready to go once he plays off the bench a couple games. I think Zidane will play him on the left and then try Vinicius on the right, at least for a couple games, and see if Vinicius' momentum can be sustained on the right wing. Although I think the answer to that might actually be no. But at least in La Liga, I think that he will be a starter for until maybe the Vinicius on the right experiment proves to be a failure. I think that Zidane will be tempted to do so. Yeah.
At what point do you think Hazard's name doesn't matter anymore. Like part of the reason why this question is the question is because Hazard, because of his price tag and name, he's a starter. You know, we've had many of these players in Real Madrid's past where, like, because of their name, he has to play. One example of this is like Kaká. After a few years, his name meant nothing. You know, it didn't matter. Like just because he was healthy didn't mean he was starting. He just wasn't good enough. At what point does Hazard become that? Where it just doesn't matter what his name is. He's clearly not able to. I mean, I'm not saying that, like, when he's healthy, he probably is able to. I'm just saying, like, at what point does his name not matter anymore?
Yeah, not matter in the sense of not being an undisputed starter, right? I mean, we're not talking about not playing at all off the bench or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Then I'll say this is probably his last chance of being of proving himself as an automatic and undisputed starter for Real Madrid. I think this run of games where he's going to be healthy and quite probably very well rested to contribute and prove his worth. I think this is probably his last chance to prove himself worthy of that kind of status, which doesn't mean that he won't be able to help the team off the bench or in other circumstances later on. But in terms of him being an undisputed and automatic starter, I think this might actually be his last chance. Yeah,
it's too early to write the story, but I bet you like how funny is it that if we beat Liverpool, that like he may just return and be back in time finally just to face his old team Chelsea in the semifinals, like after not playing at all. That would be an interesting story.